Hey everybody, this is Tony Varelli, and today I have a little bit different kind of video for you. So as many of you know, I do a lot of 3D printing with my 3D Locksport stuff. And I recently got some extra printers in my print shop, and I moved them into a closet that I have in my office. And in that closet, it had a rod that ran across it. And I thought, wow, it'd be really awesome with my printer sitting on a desk inside the closet if my filament could just hang above it, because I offer 12 different colors on my website to purchase from, and it would make me a lot more efficient if I was able to switch between those colors quicker than unloading them and reloading them off of spool holders. If I could just pull down a color, run it into the printer, when it switches, eject that color, pull another color down, and just have them all available at all times. So I went looking on Thingiverse. For those not familiar, Thingiverse is a website where people can share their files. Some of my version 1 files are available already on Thingiverse.com, but there's a design called Filament Spool Holder by 3D Startups that is available on Thingiverse. You're seeing that on the screen now. And what this is a design that has two hooks that go over a rod made for your clothes to hang on, pretty much, that holds your filament spools. And I printed one off and tested it. And the way this works originally is that these two pieces of plastic hooks are connected together with two plastic center posts. And anyone that knows anything about 3D printing knows that printing round objects is not easy unless you print them vertically, but printing anything vertically on the Z-axis takes a lot longer. So what they did is, very smartly, they made the top and the bottom of the connecting rods flat. The problem I experienced when I tested this is that my filament spools would make a thunk sound or a dunk dunk sound every time it rotated, because it would kind of catch on this flat edge. Now I'm sure had I put them in differently so the round was on top, this may not have happened, but I also wanted to be able to support larger spools. So some of my colors, or most of my colors, are Prusament filament from Prusa. It's a high quality filament, it's got very high tolerances, and it's a little more expensive, but because of the quality of the product I want to offer, I use higher quality filament. However, to get some of the colors I want, I have to use other filament providers. And there's no standardized spool size between these manufacturers. So some of mine are thicker or wider, and some of mine are taller. So I wanted to make the spool holder as universal as possible, as well as I wanted to make it more robust. When I first printed off this design from 3D Startups, I did have one of my posts break. This is probably my fault. I was in a rush, I was trying to move quickly, but with the number of orders I get, I have to move quickly. So I looked at the design, and luckily, due to the license that this is under with the Creative Commons, it does allow me to make alterations, and it does allow me to remix it as long as I share again. And I will be uploading all these design files I've created, including this video tutorial on how to put it together, to Thingiverse, so those who want to download and use it can do so. So what I have here is, here's the hooks that originally came with the design. They are slightly modified, and I'll go over those. And this is the post shape that is used to go in the top and the bottom holes, but I'll explain why I only have one here in a second. So I'm going to flip these over and show you what I've done here. So if you look at this hook, at the bottom, let's see if I can get focus, there's a hex shape, and this is to hold a nut specifically, okay? And the hole itself has also been widened. On this side, the hole has also been widened, but instead of a nut shape, there's just a large circle indent on there. Not sure how you can see it with the black filament, and these are printed at 15% infill and 0.2 millimeter layer heights. I'm sorry, these are printed at 0.2 millimeter layer heights, 15% infill. I just want to make sure, because a lot of times people don't specify what they printed at. This bar I did print at 0.2 millimeter layer height, but I did 100% infill because I want this bar to be much sturdier. Now this bar is also modified. It's actually longer. And what I did is I just took the two bars, I took one bar, I duplicated it and extended the length and then decided where I wanted the holes to be. I didn't really modify the ends of it at all or anything else about it other than making it longer. That's all I did. And I'll show you why I did that here in a second. Now these holes inside the bar are for putting your filament through and then back down. And this is to hold the filament so it doesn't unroll. I don't use it a lot because, like I said, I use a lot of Filament filament, and their spool design has a hexagon shape along the sides that literally makes it possible to stick the filament in at any spot along the spool for storage purposes. So for this build, this is what you're going to need. The only parts you're going to have to print are these two hook pieces. You have a hook A and a hook B, and then you have this center rod. Now, there's some hardware you're gonna have to buy. The first thing you're gonna need is a bolt like this. This is a 5/16 bolt that is 5 inches long. Technically, I think the thread is called 20. I don't fully understand hardware, but it's 5/16 by 5 inches long, and it's a 20 thread, okay? The other thing you're gonna need is one wing nut for a 20 thread 5/16 bolt. And then you're gonna need two nuts, just flat nuts like this. Let's see if I can get them to focus here. Yep, that are for the 5/16 bolt by 20 thread. You can get these at any of your local hardware stores. So the assembly is very, very simple. The other things you're going to need is some super glue, and this is any super glue you want to use. I just so happen to use this a lot. I like this bottle because it's got a squirt nozzle, and the other thing it offers that I use for some things is a brush to paint on the glue, which I think is kind of cool, that I have the option to brush it on or just squirt it on. Okay, so you're gonna need the glue. And then one other optional thing I have a bottle of super glue accelerant. That's a spritz bottle. I put it in this little dropper bottle because it works better for me. So you're gonna need a dropper bottle or accelerant. You don't have to have this, but if you're like me and you want to put 12 of these together very quickly, the accelerant lets you move much quicker than waiting for the glue to dry. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna find the part, the hook, that has the cutout, let's see if I can get this to focus, with the hex area in it. And all I do is I drop a few drops of super glue on every other side. So one here, and one here. And that's it. Just one drop of super glue is all I use. So I'm gonna do that now here. It's gonna be hard because I'm gonna try to keep it in frame, but I can't really look at the frame as I'm messing with super glue. So put one drop there. Put another drop here and another one here. And it really doesn't matter where it goes. Just don't use too much. You don't need a lot to make this work. Then what you do is you take the nut and you place it inside. Just like so, and it should fit down in perfectly. Okay? Then what I do is I just take my super glue accelerant and I put a few drops around the corners to make sure it dries, and I put some around this side as well. Now you might get some overspill on the nut, and that's not really a problem because we're actually going to super glue the bolt into the nut. So this isn't a very big deal. One other part that I forgot to mention that you're gonna need is this tubing. Now this tubing, I wish I could describe it better, but it's 3/8 of an inch, okay? And it's called Chief Power PEX 9 PEX 3/8 of an inch. And it is in the hardware store near all the piping. And I believe it's meant for like water lines. I'm not sure. Literally all I did is I took this bolt around and I tested different pieces. And what this is gonna do is this is gonna slide over the bolt and create the ability for it to spin without friction. Because this is smooth and this bolt is, it's got the threading on it, this allows this to spin freely on the bolt. So you're gonna need this as well. This comes in about a 5-foot section, and I just used a pair of snips to cut this down to the right length. And I'll show you how to figure out the length, and pretty much once you figure out one length, you can cut the whole 5-foot section down to these lengths. And I think you can get like 16 lengths that you need out of one piece of the piping. So once you've had the accelerator in there and it's dry, you have one side that has the open side of the nut, and you have the other side that's kind of covered. On the covered side, that's where you screw the bolt into, like so. And again, it might be a little tough in the beginning if you got the super glue on, just because it's gonna be the glue's got down into the actual threads, but it'll work its way through. Just keep working it through here. I'm not saying this is the method you should use, it's just easier to fling it around like that for me. And this is how I do it. I just go all the way down like this, and I stop right about there. And the reason I stop here is this gives me enough room to get my super glue nozzle in there. So depending on which super glue you're using, you might have to change that. And what we do is we put a little super glue on the bolt, just a tiny bit. We just want to make this as firm of a connection as possible, but it doesn't have to be super stiff. Okay, so I'm going to put a little super glue right here on the bolt, just a drop, just like that. And then I'm going to tilt it this way so it runs down into the bolt, and I'm going to screw the bolt down into the nut. The goal is that a little squirts out onto the bolt head and holds it in place, but we don't want so much, and I'm going to tighten this down as much as I can. We don't want so much that it comes through the other end of the nut. And again, by putting a little drop of accelerant on the bolt, it kind of runs down the threading and it seeps into the bolt and locks it in there. And I do put a little bit, just a tiny, tiny bit around the head. And there's like a caliper action, I can't remember exactly what it's called, where it sucks the moisture in. So this bolt is now glued into that nut, which makes it perfect, which means this bolt won't slide out. It's now captive on this hook, which is what we want. Okay? So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna slide the plastic tubing over this bolt. Just like this. And I wanna show you that on this tubing, I don't have perfectly level cuts. You can see how it's not 100% even. If you wanna take your time and make it a little more even, see if I can get this to focus here. There we go. If you want to take your time to make this more even, you absolutely can. It's not necessary though, because we're not going to make this tight. We're going to make this loose so it can easily rotate. So we take this plastic tube and we put it on like this. And then the next thing we do is we screw this nut onto the bolt. And I screw it down until it's tight against the plastic. Like this. I tie it until you can't move the plastic now. I mean, you can barely move it, but it's tough, there's a lot of friction. Then what I do is I back the nut off until there's no friction at all and the tubing can kind of move. Just like that, which is what I want. And I keep note of where that's at and I keep it upwards like this so the gravity pulls the plastic down. Okay? I keep note of where that nut's at on the bolt and I back it off about the thickness of the nut. About like that. Then what you're gonna do is you're gonna put a little super glue right here on the bolt, just a tiny bit again. You don't want a lot, and you don't want to get it on the plastic or down into the plastic. Again, just a very small amount. Now what I do is I hold the plastic upwards like that, so the super glue doesn't run down on the plastic, and I tighten the bolt up. And again, I tighten it right to the point before it touches the plastic. So right there, it's not touching the plastic at all. And then while I hold the plastic, I turn it the other way around and I drop some accelerator down in. And then I do the same thing on the top. And this dries the super glue instantly. So now this bolt will not move. I give it 1 second just to make sure it's dry, because I don't want this plastic to get any super glue on it, because it needs to be able to spin freely. And by this point, it's good to go. Okay? Now, if we look at the other hook, you'll notice that I don't have a hex shape like I did on the first one. This is a circle. And that's because it's very difficult to line this bolt up perfectly. Let's see if I get this to focus again. It's hard to get this to line up perfectly. But all we need this for is a stop. This is just a stop gap. It stops the other hook from touching the plastic. So pretty much when you put this on, the bolt fits into that hole without any, no matter which way it's put on, it fits. And again, this bolt's only purpose is to stop the plastic from coming off and to stop this hook from sliding all the way down. So the next thing we want to do is we want to take the bar, the top bar, and we're going to apply a little glue to just one side, and then we're going to stick it in to the top hole like this. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you do this is the angle of this. Depending on your spool, if you put it like this, vertically, like they show on the Thingiverse page, if your spool's too high, I had a spool that would rub against this, and that just didn't work. So the way I do it is when it hangs on a rod, it's not gonna hang straight up and, let's see if I can example it. It's not gonna hang straight up and down. The weight of it's gonna take it like this just a little bit. So what I do is I take this and I make it vertically straight up and down, and then I angle it up just a little bit more, knowing it's gonna rotate forward. So from the side, it's hard to see, but you wanna rotate it a little more back than level, because that's what you're gonna end up with. So what I do is I take the super glue again, because the bottle's empty, I have to kind of shake it to the bottom, and I put a generous amount around the end of this top rod that you printed. Just kind of get it all over. And if you get too much on this, it's actually okay if it squirts out a little bit, because it makes a more solid connection. I'm not too worried about this because nothing else is gonna touch the side of it. Okay, I stick the end of the rod in, and then I kind of try to level it by putting on my finger, which it already actually looks pretty good where it's at. I make sure it's shoved all the way in, and again, like before, I had some accelerant around the gaps just to make sure that this glue locks it in place to where it's at, and that's good. This is now locked in place. So technically, this is a fully built piece now. Okay, so this is ready to go. This piece is locked in place. This part's locked in place. These nuts are locked in place. This is your finished piece. Now, to hang it, you're gonna take the last piece here, the last hook, and this circle, let's see if I can get to focus again, is gonna slide over this nut, and then this piece loosely, without glue, snaps on, and that's it. Okay, so there's your hook, and then you use the wing nut to fasten it on. And you can tighten this down really tight. I prefer to like just twist it on, because you have to realize this is a spacer bar. This is really the purpose of this, is to stop these top two pieces from collapsing together. And because you have the nut on the inside, you don't have to worry about it squishing down on this. This still freely spins. The inside nut in here clamps this plastic piece between the inside nut and this wing nut on the outside. So this piece is now 100% complete. So how do you hang your filament on it? I'll show you that next. Let me just put the accelerator away and the super glue away here, and I'll demonstrate that. So here I have a spool of Filament. This is PETG, but it doesn't matter. Their spools are all the same. So what you're going to want to know is the way your filament comes off the spool. So this right now is looping around this way, like this. So I'm going to just put that through the hole like that. I'm going to unloosen this nut. I'm going to pop the top part off because this is the only friction fit piece. So I'm going to pop this off first, like so, and then just slide this off. Then the hooks go backwards. Remember, the hooks go to the back of the hook. So we're going to hook over the rod like this. I'm going to take the white plastic piece and I'm going to slide it through the middle with this black bar going across the top. I'm going to take the black hook on the other side. Again, it can be any color you want. Put it over the bolt, and then I'm going to snap it into place on the top bar like so, and then put the wing nut on. I'm going to hold this bar and just twist it down tight. And now, let me zoom out a bit. We have a fully spinning. Now, you'll notice there's some back and forth movement here. That's not a problem, especially if you have a filament guide on the top of your printer. And again, the printers I use are Prusa i3 MKS's, SK Plus also. So this works perfectly. It hangs on the filament and this just spins like this. So it's completely good. Here is the actual filament end. If you want to, you can part the included filament holder at the top for when you're not using it. So you pull it through the top, and then you push it back through the top part again. Oh, let me get that in there. And it holds it in place just like so. And for some of my filament spools, I do this. This is how I store it. But with Filament, again, they have this nice hexagon shape on the outside, so you can put your filament through any side piece. So on most of my Filament, that's exactly what I do. So this is my remix of the original piece that was created by 3D Startups. Just sharing this on Thingiverse. The link will be down in the description, and the link to the original file and design will also be down in the description. So I hope you get some use out of this. If you can find a way that this works for you to hang your filament, let me know. Like it on Thingiverse, comment if you have any questions, and I hope this video helped you with the assembly of it. Thanks a lot.